Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. Today on the program, officials condole with the family of overseas Filipino worker brutally killed in Kuwait. A lawmaker renews calls for a constitutional convention to amend the 1987 charter to usher in economic growth. And the House of Representatives continues to probe agri-smuggling that's triggering soaring prices of agricultural goods. Kabayan Party List Representative Salo joins us in the show. The wake of slain OFW Julie B. Ranara began on Sunday at her home in Las Piñas, with some government officials visiting to condole with the bereaved family. Kuwaiti authorities have arrested the 17-year-old son of Ranara's employer, tagged as the primary suspect in her death. Lawmakers differ in their stand on a possible deployment ban to Kuwait following the brutal killing. Let's go straight to the source of the story. House Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs Chairman Kabayan Party List Representative Salo. Congressman, good morning and welcome to the show. I think you're on mute.
Good morning, Ria. Yes, good morning also to all the viewers.
Now, Congressman, you personally visited the wake of slain OFW Julie B. Ranara yesterday. You were also there when her remains arrived last Friday. As a lawmaker, what is your sentiment on the fate of our OFWs, especially one like Julie B?
Definitely, same with everyone else. I feel total outrage on what happened to her. This brutal killing definitely shouldn't visit anyone, shouldn't be done to anyone, particularly to our fellow Kabayan who has just been in the Kuwait to look for better opportunities, just working for her family, and yet she met this particular fate.
Congressman, when you attended the wake, ano po ang kwento sa inyo ng pamilya ni Julie B? How did she come to this end? How did this happen?
Medyo sila rin po nagulat daw po sa pangyari because they never thought it will come to this, because according to them, the husband told me that they were able to talk to her sometime Friday of that week before she was killed on Sunday. And according to him, everything was pretty all right. Although there were times when, according to him, nabanggit pa po ni Julie B na iniisip na rin po niyang umuwi. And every one of them said, well, we're excited to seeing you. And they discussed it among themselves, among their family, and the children of Julie B. And they were excited to see her when she comes home. And they even reminded her, according to the husband, of their request for a toy, a robot toy.
It's really sad. Well, what we know is the investigation is still underway, but with the information we have so far, who or what entity is responsible for this insofar as there was some kind of a lapse that this was able to happen?
Definitely, one particular in charge of the Department of Migrant Workers, which is a new department which just been organized, and of course they're fully operational this year because we have just given them a budget from Congress. But of course, they have to make sure that the agencies, possible lapses made by the private recruitment agency as well as the foreign recruitment agency, should be meted the required or necessary penalty as a result of possible lapses or oversight on their part.
Now, for the Migrant Workers Department, they're going to send a team to Kuwait to probe the case of Julie B. Ranara. Do you feel this is a step in the right direction? And how much do you think this team can actually accomplish when it goes to Kuwait?
Definitely, this is really a right step. In as much as what we need is full coordination by the Philippine government with the government of Kuwait to make sure that the prosecution would certainly go through at the same time. And at the same time, we'll be able to provide all the support and all the pieces of evidence that we may have in order to support the prosecution of the perpetrator. So definitely, it's a message to the Kuwaiti government that the Philippine government really means business on this particular matter, that we're taking this very seriously, and that this particular event or circumstance, the killing of our fellow Kabayan should never go unpunished. So it's a statement on our part, on the Philippine government part, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to really coordinate with the implementing officers there to make sure that the prosecution would go through as what we envisioned it to be.
Right. Now, for the recruiting agencies that, process the employment of OFWs, they're supposed to monitor the well-being of the OFWs, check on them, see where they are. How regularly is that actually done and carried out? How are they able to do this?
Honestly, I have to double check that with the DMW itself because we understand that they have adopted now a new scheme, particularly in Saudi Arabia, where the employer or the recruitment agencies should have at least one welfare officer to check on the status of our migrant workers. For every 100 persons, there should be a specific one welfare officer. But I have to check whether this particular standards or parameters are already being introduced or done with Kuwait because they are informed me that they're thinking of adopting it. So I suppose it has not yet been adopted. But this afternoon, we'll be having a consultation meeting with all the recruitment agencies at the DMW upon the call of Secretary Tutsople. So I myself will be joining them in order to meet all the recruitment agencies as well as to thrash out certain items on how to improve our monitoring process.
How else can the government ensure justice for Julie B. Ranara and her family, Congressman?
Definitely, as I mentioned a while ago, we should really make sure that the person who committed this gruesome crime should be meted with a stringent penalty allowed by the Kuwait law. And of course, they will be perpetually banned, the particular family should be perpetually banned from receiving or accepting any Filipino domestic helper. And of course, we need to make sure also that all the other cases should also be pursued. All those pending cases, not only this one, the case of Ranara, because I understand that based on the data that we received, there are around 196 similar cases since 2016 up to the present. So I suppose this is not just one, but one of 196. So we really have to make sure that all of these cases should be properly pursued.
Speaking of cases, Congressman, this is the third documented brutal murder of a Kabayan in Kuwait. You will recall that the first was in 2018 with Joanna Demafelis, whose body was found in the freezer of her employer's apartment. And the other one was in 2020. That was Jeneline Villavende, who was also brutally killed. And this prompted that deployment ban to Kuwait. Now, the thing that's being debated is, should there be another deployment ban to Kuwait because of Ranara's case? What's your take, Congressman?
I understand definitely the call of most of our lawmakers and some of the people because of the outrage that we feel against the killing of our fellow Kabayan. But definitely we have to balance things in as much as we understand that there are around 250,000 OFWs working in Kuwait as of the moment. 200 out of these 250,000, 70% are working as domestic helpers. So we have to make sure that their welfare are also promoted and to make sure that they would also be properly treated. Number one, if we are going to impose immediate deployment ban, most of these 250,000 workers will be ending their contract soon because their contracts would only last for 2 years. So my concern is the moment that your employers would know that there's a deployment ban, then there's a possibility that when their contract ends, they will not be allowed to go home to the Philippines. So we may be increasing some concerns. And of course, their families would also be concerned when their family members would not be able to come home at the end of their contract. Number two, of course, we also have a lot of other fellow Filipinos are still thinking of going abroad, particularly in Kuwait, to try their luck. So my concern is with this particular number, it's just so staggering. And if we're going to impose immediate deployment ban, then where most of the opportunities would go. And we understand, Ms. Ria, that the reason why this number of Filipinos going to Kuwait has increased to 250,000 was the fact that we imposed previously a deployment ban in Saudi Arabia. So most of our fellow Filipinos were working and trying to apply in Saudi Arabia. When that market was closed, then they went to Kuwait. So my concern, definitely, of course, we understand the validity of the outrage and the concern for a call for deployment ban, but I think we have to balance things. But in my case, I have to listen still to the sentiments of most of our people.
Right. For Senator Rafi Tulfo, on his part, he wants a gradual ban to Kuwait and perhaps find other countries for deployment where he says working conditions are better, OFWs would be safer. I think he mentioned Guam as a possibility. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, I support that particular call of Senator Tulfo. I have actually discussed that matter with him because, as you would recall, I just went to Guam last December to negotiate with the Guam government to make sure that the processes will be streamlined, particularly in the Philippines, and to make sure that more of our Filipinos would be given more opportunities to work in Guam, considering that the respect for human rights and labor rights in Guam is high, as well as the income being given to our fellow Filipinos. And based on my discussion also with Secretary Tuchople, they're really trying to negotiate with certain markets or countries for them to be able to receive more of our Filipinos. So we hope that we'll be able to open more doors, opportunities for fellow Kabayans, particularly in areas where there is high respect for human rights and labor rights, as well as there is a higher wages which will be accrued to our workers. So definitely, I'm with Senator Tulfo in this particular regard, in his call for us to open more markets for the Filipinos.
Congressman, do you feel that with this tragic death of Julie B. Renata, Congress needs to probe this case?
Well, as chairperson of the committee handling this particular case, I would definitely be open to this particular call if some of our lawmakers would call for an investigation. But definitely, even without that particular investigation, we're already doing our oversight functions. As chairperson of that particular committee, we're continually coordinating with the Department of Migrant Workers and their officials, as well as the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, to make sure that protection to our OFWs is strengthened, as well as the programs being implemented by the government and being given to our Filipino OFWs are being given to them.
Right, Congressman, we need to take a short break, but do stay with us. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. Our source today, Kabayan Party List Representative Ron Salo. Congressman, welcome again to the program. I want to talk about the CONCON. You are pushing for charter change via a constitutional commission. Can you tell us which specific parts of the 1987 Constitution would you like to change?
Yes, Ria, I've just filed my proposed measure creating or calling for a constitutional convention for us to elect our representatives who will be proposing or crafting or drafting the proposed amendments to the 1987 Constitution. Specifically, I am focusing on the economic provisions of the Constitution. Now, of course, we have actually achieved 7.6 GDP growth for 2022, but definitely, I'm sure we would achieve more if we liberalize more our economic provisions in the Constitution.
Now, why have you proposed a constitutional commission as opposed to a constitutional assembly?
Yes, Ms. Ria, I've been in Congress for the third time now. In the first and 17th Congress, then 18th Congress, and now in the 19th Congress. I myself have participated in all these hearings, actively participated. But of course, the proposal then was to pursue it through a constituent assembly. But we know for a fact that most of our people seems the Constituent Assembly is unpopular to our people. For one of those reasons, I understand is the possible conflict of interest of all those sitting members. Because in the Constituent Assembly, all the current members of the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate will be constituting themselves as the Constituent Assembly to propose amendments to the Constitution. So of course, the possible conflict of interest there is to perhaps pursue our interests first rather the interest of the nation. That's the reason why in this particular proposal, using a constitutional convention, we will be electing members of this particular convention who will be the one to propose possible amendments to the Constitution. So that particular conflict of interest doesn't come in as much it's a different group altogether who will be elected by our own people.
Now, you have some economists like Winnie Monsod and Ibon Foundation's Sunny Africa expressing concerns on the need to change the Constitution. What would you say to them?
Honestly, definitely, it's the same concern that has been raised every time we discuss possible amendments to the Constitution. And oftentimes, they always say that it's not yet an opportune time. But since the time when we discussed this particular proposed amendments, it has always been never a good opportunity or never a good time. So I suppose, when exactly is that particular opportune time for us to amend this particular restrictive provisions to the Constitution? So I suppose it's about time for us really to really have a take a serious look at this, and of course our proposals to through a constitutional convention where each of us will be electing our own representatives in this particular CONCON who will initiate or propose specific amendments that we wish to happen with their present constitution.
As you mentioned, Congressman, there have been many efforts to change the Constitution in the past. How confident are you that this time around Congress will pass it? Do you feel that you have enough support from your lawmaker colleagues?
I suppose so, because I could feel that particular sentiment since I was in the 17th Congress. Most of our fellow members of the House of Representatives feel the need to really amend our Constitution. Except that, of course, the issue has always been, it is not yet time, and the usual concern, which is the process of amending it through a Constituent Assembly, where, as I mentioned a while ago, there's that particular concern among our people that we may be initiating it or proposing it solely for our own interests. But in this particular proposal of ours, which is through a constitutional convention, that particular concern of our fellow Filipinos would not come in. As I mentioned, we will not be the one who will propose amendments to the Constitution. So that particular conflict of interest that we may just be pursuing it just to extend our term would never come in this particular proposal or process using the Constitutional Convention.
Right, because that is a big factor, these fears that, it could be an opportunity for lawmakers to perpetuate themselves into power. What other safeguards do you have in the proposed bill?
In the proposed measure, I specifically write there what exactly are the powers of this particular Constitutional Convention that we are electing or creating. Of course, their primary purpose is to come up with proposals to the Constitution, the 1970 Constitution, and of course all the other powers that are inherent in a convention in order for it to be able to pursue properly its avowed objectives. Number two, I propose here that it should not be maximum number of the members of this particular constitutional convention would be 310. One for each district, and the rest will be represented from the party list system, to make sure that there's also from the sectors who will be initiating or espousing concerns of their specific sectors. And of course, the time bound. It should only be maximum 2 years from the time that they are constituted. And after that particular period of time, then the result or the report or the proposal will be submitted to the electorate, to the people, through the Commission on Elections for it to be ratified, whether or not that particular proposal would be acceptable or not. At the same time, we provided here a period when that particular ratification will be conducted to make sure that once they have come up with a proposal, there's a more opportunity or time for people to deliberate, to understand, and to study whether those particular proposals would sit well with them.
Congressman, to clarify, who exactly would be choosing the members of the CONCON? Is it Congress itself?
No, it would be by election. So
Okay.
we'll be electing per district who will be representing us in the Constitutional Convention for that particular district, separate from their district congressman. And of course, there will also be coming from the party list members who will be participating in this particular election. And then each party list congressman, party list will be given one slot if they are able to meet the required votes necessary in order to participate or be part of this particular convention.
All right. Thank you for that, Congressman. We still have more to talk about, but we also need to take a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. Our source today, Kabayan Party List Representative Ron Salo. Congressman, welcome back to the show once again. Okay, I want to touch on anti-agri smuggling. As you know, a Senate bill has been filed amending the Anti-Agricultural Smuggling Act. And what it seeks is to have hoarding, profiteering, and cartels of sugar, corn, poultry, pork, garlic, onions, carrots, and fish, among others, as economic sabotage. Do you support this?
Definitely, Ria. We support this particular proposed measure to make sure that the profiteering activity or attitude of some of our merchants would be lessened, and of course they would be dissuaded from continuing to profit from this particular agricultural products.
Now, as we know, agri-smuggling, shortage of certain agricultural products, it's such a deeply rooted problem in that there are so many aspects involved. Somebody said there's like 8 layers of middlemen involved in getting goods from the farm to the groceries or to the markets. How do you propose we end this long-time problem?
Well, I think one of the ways here is to make sure also that most of our people will be educated, particularly their farmers. For one, as we mentioned, there are 8 layers with respect to the middlemen. What we have to do perhaps is to make sure that the Department of Agriculture is able to empower our farmers to make sure that their produce would reach the market directly. And if perhaps there's a middleman, then it should just be just one. Because I actually went in one of the towns of the country, particularly in Nueva Ecija, where I was able to talk with one of the executive LGU here there, the local chief executive. And one of the things that they've been doing is the government itself, it's the LGU buying the produce from the farmers, and they are the ones specifically selling it to the market. Perhaps this is a good practice, a best practice that perhaps can be replicated in all areas of the country to make sure that we lower the cost of vegetables, but at the same time we increase the income of the farmers, and at the same time the goods goes directly to the consumers.
Right. I mean, aside from educating our farmers, how else can we empower them and protect them?
Of course, as I mentioned, this particular case, the government itself, and perhaps we have to make sure that the local government units also are involved by actively participating in the market. As I understand, most of us would take a take and see, or just look at it, wait and see attitude, particularly among our local government officials, thinking that perhaps this is not part of their mandate. But mind you, I hope and I suppose that most of our LGUs would appreciate the role of being an initiator as well as the one who will assist our farmers specifically to make sure that their produce specifically reach the market. So what we need to do is to assist also, empower also our LGUs to make this particular support to the farmers within your areas.
All right, Congressman, thank you. We do appreciate your time this morning. That was House Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs Chairman, Kabayan Party List Representative Ron Salo. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Riatan Watco Trillo. You're watching CNN Philippines.